In attack phase, ships, soldiers, and cannons have the ability to attack. If two soldiers become adjacent to one another at any time during move phase, they are considered locked in combat and must fight on attack phase. Attacks between two soldiers are resolved by both soldiers rolling one die. A 4, 5, or a 6 is a hit and kills the other soldier. Soldiers that are destroyed in attack phase always get to swing back. Cannons and ships get one attack per turn. If one of the player's cannons or ships decides to shoot at the opponent's wall, they first choose one of the spaces on the wall they want to shoot at. In this example, one of the red player's cannons decides to shoot the bottom left space of the blue player's castle wall. Whenever a castle wall is being targeted, the player rolls both the black and the white die. To identify if a shot was successful, the players count the number of regions from the cannon taking the shot to the space being targeted on the board. The diamond-shaped regions all contain castles, and in this case, there's one region here, 2, 3, and finally 4, where the target is. In this case, the number 4 or higher must be rolled to make a successful hit. The successful hit leaves the blue player's castle with a hole in the bottom left corner. If this hole is not fixed, the game could be over for the blue player. When either a siege weapon, a soldier, or a ship is targeted by a cannon, they receive additional defense. Both the siege weapon and the soldier receive 2 additional defense, and the ship an additional 1 defense when defending a cannon shot. The attacker still counts the number of regions they are away from the defender. In this case, the blue cannon is 2 regions away from the siege weapon and the soldier. A normal shot would need a 2 or greater to hit. Since the soldier and the siege weapon are both considered mobile units, they receive an additional 2 defense. So in this example, both the siege weapon and the soldier would need a 4 or higher to hit. Ships receive an additional 1 in defense for being mobile. In this example, instead of needing a 3 or higher to hit the ship would need a 4 or higher to hit. Troops, occupation discs, and wall spaces all take 1 hit to be destroyed. Cannons, ships, and siege weapons all take 2 hits to be destroyed. If one of these 3 items receives a hit, place a damage marker on the item. Destroyed items in a game are only removed on upkeep phase, with one exception. If a siege weapon rolls over either a soldier or an occupation disc, it is immediately removed during that phase. The next phase is build phase. In this phase, players play cards to both patch up holes in their walls and to expand walls out to try to capture other towns. In this example, any of the 3 cards shown can be played to patch the hole in the blue wall. A single space card is considered a patch. In this example, play the card down and remove the hole to patch the wall. In this example, only one of the spaces in the card are needed to patch the hole in the wall. The additional 3 pieces will stick out into the open area. In many situations, the exact piece may not be playable. Players may have to use smaller pieces to complete the full shape. 1 space fills the hole, the other 3 spaces will stick out. Again, one of the spaces fills the hole, the other 3 stick out, using smaller pieces to complete the shape. This square piece can also be used to fix the wall. One of the spaces fill the hole, The other 3 wrap around the corner to finish the shape. Wall pieces are never stacked on top of each other. Please make sure you use smaller pieces to finish in the shapes. Players also play cards to expand out to take over new areas. New wall pieces cannot be built on top of spaces that are already occupied by troops. They can, however, be built on top of wall spaces occupied by owned occupation discs. If a player places a new wall piece on top of a space that has an occupation disc, the occupation disc is destroyed. Newly captured towns can only be considered strongholds when they contain 8 or more spaces within the castle walls. This does not include the town space. In this example, the player would not receive the additional 5 points during purchase phase because the castle only contains 5 spaces. In this example, the player would receive the additional 5 points in the next purchase phase because there are 13 spaces other than the town that have been captured. If the number of spaces inside of a player's stronghold is ever reduced to less than 8, that player still receives 5 points during the next purchase phase, as long as at one point it was a valid stronghold with 8 or more spaces. During deploy phase, players place out their newly purchased items, with an exception of cards, which can be placed in both move and build phase. Occupation discs must be built in the correct locations. Markets, armories, libraries, and masons must be built inside of the castle walls, inside of a courtyard. Quarries, workshops, outposts, and ports must be built outside of the castle walls. Workshops, quarries, and ports must be adjacent to castle wall spaces. Outposts can be built on any land space. Soldiers must be placed either adjacent to a wall that is owned by the player or next to an outpost that has been built. If a player purchased cannons, those cannons must be placed on a wall space that is next to a courtyard, in either a capital stronghold or a town stronghold. These 2 new cannons have both been placed in valid locations. These 2 cannons have been placed in non-valid locations. Each stronghold allows the player to purchase up to 4 cannons. In this example, since the player owns 2 strongholds, they are allowed to contain up to 8 cannons. Here are the 8 occupation discs or buildings that you can build during the game. The market gives you 1 additional spending point during purchase phase. The port allows you to build ships. The armory allows your cannons to shoot at 1 better number. Example, instead of rolling a 4 or higher to hit, a player can now hit with a 3 or higher. Workshops, they allow you to build siege weapons. Libraries, they allow the player to hold 2 additional cards in their hand. Quarries allow the player to get 1 card free for every 3 they purchase. The mason allows players to fix holes in their walls or to destroy 1 wall space if needed. And the outpost allows the player to deploy troops at the position of the outpost building. There are additional benefits that a player can have when they team up the correct combination of occupation discs. Here are the occupation disc pairs. Consult page 9 of the rulebook for further details on how to use these occupation discs. That was the end of round 1. Now begins the upkeep phase for round 2. Any items that were attacked during this round that need to be removed are removed now. Soldiers and occupation discs that were destroyed can now be removed from the game. The first player marker is also passed off to the next player. In this round, The blue player will go first during all of the phases. Any occupation discs that weren't used during the first turn are also removed off the side of the board, and 4 new occupation discs are drawn and put in their place to be purchased during this round. If a wall is successfully hit and a skull is also rolled on the black die, then an adjacent wall is also damaged during the attack. In this example, the corner wall space was hit, and the shooter decides to choose the adjacent space to the right to also receive damage. Each player must maintain at least 1 stronghold to remain in the game. In this example, even though the player did not maintain their capital stronghold, they are still in the game. On the next purchase phase, they will only be able to spend 5 points instead of 15. The game now continues with each player taking turns going through each turn. Remember the objectives. Either take over and maintain 3 strongholds, or cripple your opponent to where they cannot maintain at least 1 stronghold at the end of the turn.